The wind howls, the fire flickers. You're lying there, tangled in a heavy woolen blanket, and you wonder if your toes are still attached to your body. The smell of burning wood mixes with the scent of wet earth, and every creak of the old wooden beams above you sends a shiver down your spine. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, probably just a rat, but you can't be sure. The sounds of the night seem to creep into your bones. You try to sleep, but it's just not happening. Back in the day, there was no such thing as me time. Women didn't get to sit around and sip tea, basking in a bubble bath with the world at their feet. No, they worked all day. And the night? Well, that was filled with fears of illness, bad husbands, childbirth, and the looming threat of eternal damnation. If you were a woman living in those times, your anxieties were not taken seriously. Instead, they were dismissed, swept under the rug, or worse yet, blamed on your body. The worst part? You were supposed to stay quiet about it. Silence was the gold standard for women, always patient, always dutiful, always suffering in silence. Anxiety? Oh, that's just a passing feeling, nothing to worry about. But let's be honest, women didn't have the luxury of worrying about their own well-being back then. You were expected to stay calm, even when your world was falling apart. The pressure to smile, be obedient, and look pretty was enough to send anyone over the edge. You're still lying on that straw mattress, staring up at the smoke-streaked ceiling. Every day, you worked, scraped, cleaned, and raised children, and yet your mind raced. Maybe it was the constant fear of what tomorrow might bring. Maybe it was the whispers of gossip in the village square. Maybe it was just the endless monotony of life. And then, one day, you couldn't take it anymore. But who could you talk to? Who would listen? Certainly not the men who were busy running the world as it was. You might have whispered your worries to another woman, but she had her own battle with the relentless demands of life. No, the world wasn't kind to a woman who showed signs of weakness. The thing about anxiety back then was that no one thought it was a big deal. It was just a fancy word for nervous, you know, the kind of nervous that was ignored, treated like a minor inconvenience, or, if it got too obvious, shoved into a pretty little box labeled hysteria. And don't get me started on the word hysteria. It was like the catch-all diagnosis for anything that didn't fit the neatly stitched, perfectly symmetrical expectations of a lady's life. Feeling a little anxious? Hysteria. Crying more than normal? Hysteria. Dreaming of running away? You guessed it. Hysteria. What did hysteria even mean? Well, back then, if a woman was a little too emotional, a little too out of sorts, a little too unfeminine, they slapped that label on her like a badge of shame. It wasn't even considered a real problem. It was just you. Your poor little uterus was probably acting up again, or maybe you were just too fragile for this world. And that's exactly how they saw it. A woman's mind wasn't capable of real distress. No, she was just a vessel for emotions, unable to handle the complexities of life. Maybe it's just your womb, the doctor would say, staring at you with an air of condescension. The man would sit there, in all his glory, with a smug expression, thinking his diagnosis was some kind of brilliant revelation. Hysteria. That's it. There was no question of how a woman felt. what she thought, or how the world was systematically breaking her down. Oh no, it was her womb, her biology, her womanhood that caused it all. And the worst part? You had no way of proving them wrong. Imagine being trapped in a time when speaking up was not an option. Imagine not even knowing how to express your deepest fears because you were taught to silence them. Anxiety, it was an inconvenience. The real crisis was making sure you didn't rock the boat. The village didn't help either. All you had was the constant hum of everyday life, the haggling at the market, the gossipy whispers from the other women, and the old priest who seemed to show up every time you thought you might have a moment to yourself. You were expected to be everything to everyone. And when you faltered, well, let's just say there was always a helpful suggestion or two. Some would suggest a hot bath for your nerves. Some might say a little bit of tea would cure it all. But that's just the way it went. Here's a tea. Here's a warm bath. There's nothing more we can do, dear. Sure, those might have worked if your soul wasn't unraveling with every passing moment. But who had the time or the strength to sit in a bath and sip tea when your life was made up of endless tasks, from milking cows to tending to children? The simple truth was, there was no space for women's mental health. It didn't exist. The word mental health wasn't even in their vocabulary. Women were, at best, expected to endure. At worst, they were told to pray harder, be quieter, and just accept it. This is your role. This is your purpose. But even with all the noise, the isolation, the constant demands, women were still resilient. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't heroic, but it was survival. Sometimes survival meant finding a way to sit in silence for hours, letting your body shut down from exhaustion before you had to get back up and keep going. Sometimes survival meant pretending your anxiety didn't exist because no one cared to hear it. And so, over time, this epidemic of anxiety went largely unnoticed. Women carried it with them like an invisible weight, their minds and hearts frayed by years of not being allowed to speak. The days passed like smoke in the air, faint and fleeting, but there, always there. The thing is, though, even in those grim days, the quiet rebellion of the mind didn't stop. Women kept living. They kept surviving, day after day. And in that survival, there was power, there was dignity. Even if they were never allowed to speak it aloud, even if no one ever listened, they endured. And that, in itself, was enough. It wasn't comfort, but it was life, and somehow it was enough. The wind howls outside, the walls creak, and you shiver, though it's the middle of the day. The cold seems to seep into your bones, just like the anxiety that never quite leaves you. You're sitting in a stiff wooden chair, feeling the rough fabric of your dress scratch at your skin, hands folded tightly in your lap. The floor beneath you is cold and uneven, the air stale with the scent of herbs and medicine, things meant to make you feel better, but they just make you feel worse. The doctor's office is eerily quiet, except for the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second dragging like it's been stretched into eternity. You wait, eyes darting from the dusty old books on the shelves to the odd instruments hanging on the walls, none of which you can identify. There's a sharp smell of alcohol and something else you can't quite place. an odd mix of cleanliness and neglect. Your heart races as the door opens with a creak, and in walks the doctor, a man in a well-worn coat that has probably seen more patients than you've had meals. He doesn't look at you, not at first. He walks right past you, rummaging through papers, muttering to himself. There's a dullness in his movements, as if he's seen too many patients to care about one more. Sit still, he says, barely looking at you. What brings you in today? You open your mouth, but the words feel like they're stuck in your throat. How do you explain that the things you're feeling, fear, unease, the tightness in your chest, the constant worry, aren't just a passing phase? How do you put into words what's been gnawing at your insides, eating away at your sense of peace? But you try. I, I don't feel right, you say, voice trembling slightly. I feel overwhelmed, anxious, like something's always wrong. He glances at you, then quickly looks away, as though your words are an inconvenience, something to be brushed aside. It's probably just stress. You're a woman, after all. We're all a little sensitive, aren't we? You stare at him, blinking in disbelief. But he cuts you off. Nothing serious. I'm sure you'll feel better soon. You just need to calm down. Rest, maybe take a walk. Have a cup of tea. Stress can be a powerful thing. You nod because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to accept what he says without question, as if his word is gospel. You wonder if this is it, if this is all the explanation you're ever going to get. No tests, no second opinions, just his word and a couple of suggestions that make you feel small. The door clicks shut behind him, and you're left sitting there, heart pounding. The anxiety that gripped you just moments ago doesn't go away. It lingers in your chest, heavy and suffocating. But what can you do? The doctor said it's nothing, that you're simply stressed. You want to believe him. You want to feel better, to trust his diagnosis. But the truth? You've heard it before, haven't you? It's the same thing every time. When a woman complains, when she shares her fears, her discomfort, she's met with dismissal. Her experiences are minimized, reduced to something normal, something that doesn't need to be treated. Anxiety? That's just a woman's problem. It's a phase. It'll pass. You'll feel better tomorrow. The doctor's office has always been a place of judgment, a place where women's voices have been silenced, where their concerns are brushed aside. You're told to accept that your fears are just in your head and to go on with your life as if nothing is wrong. There's no space for you to say, but I don't feel like myself. I feel lost, scared, unsettled. No, there's no room for that. Not in a world where women are expected to be strong, to be calm, to be everything for everyone. And so, you leave the doctor's office. The door closes behind you with a soft thud, and you step back into the cold. The street is bustling with life, but you feel as if you're moving through it like a ghost. People pass by, absorbed in their own lives, while you try to hold yourself together. You want to scream, to tell someone, to cry out for help, but you can't. You've been told that your fears don't matter, that they're just part of being a woman. But what if they're not? What if your anxiety isn't just stress or fragility? What if there's more to it? Something deeper, something worth paying attention to. But the world doesn't listen. It never has. And so you keep moving, silent, carrying your fear with you like a weight on your shoulders, waiting for the day when someone will finally hear you. The truth is, you're not just a body in a chair waiting for a diagnosis. You're a person, a woman, with thoughts, feelings, and a heart that beats with a rhythm that no one seems to understand. And maybe, just maybe, if the world could listen, really listen, they'd hear you. But today, you walk away empty handed. Once again, it's not the first time, and it probably won't be the last, but it stings just as much every time, and somehow it's enough for now. The wind howls, rattling the windows of your modest home, and you curl tighter under the covers. The world outside seems a bit too loud, too harsh, too much. Inside, though, everything is still, except for the nagging thought that maybe you're just not cut out for this life. You lie there, stiff and sore, staring at the ceiling that's seen better days, wondering if this endless fatigue will ever end. Your body feels like it's been run ragged, but the idea of rest seems almost foreign, even though you're told it's the cure. You've been to the doctor, the one with the long gray beard and a habit of barely looking at you when he speaks. You didn't expect much when you sat down in his office, but you certainly didn't expect this. A little rest will do you good, my dear, he says in his gravelly voice, the kind that sounds like it's used to dismissing complaints. Rest, the cure-all, a few days in bed, maybe a little bit of quiet. That's all it took, or so they said. But you know deep down, it's more than just your body that's tired. It's your soul, your mind, everything. The exhaustion you feel runs deeper than what can be fixed by a few extra hours under blankets. But you know better than to argue with a doctor in those days. He's got his papers, his degrees on the wall, and his fancy medical jargon. Who are you to question him? He tells you that bed rest is all you need. No need for tests, no need for probing questions. Just rest. The world moves on, and you lie in bed. The ticking of the clock, the creaking of the house, the occasional sound of the children playing outside. Everything feels like it's happening in another world. You're not a part of it anymore, not really. You're here, in this bed, waiting. But what are you waiting for? The idea of being bedbound was the answer to everything in the past. Sick, rest, tired, rest, sad, rest, anxiety. Oh, that was simply too much stress. The answer was still the same: rest. Of course, it wasn't the cure for everything, but it was the blanket solution they had. No one really bothered to look deeper into the underlying causes. What else was there to say? And so you rest. You lie there, propped up with pillows, waiting for the magic of sleep to come. Maybe the doctor's right. Maybe all you need is some quiet time away from the world. But as the days drag on, the stillness of your room feels more suffocating than peaceful. The walls close in, and the idea of rest begins to feel like another form of confinement. How could lying here, doing nothing, ever make you feel better? The trouble with bed rest is that it didn't leave room for much else. There was no space for talking about what was really going on, the swirling mess of emotions, the thoughts that keep you up at night, the worries that never seem to end. It wasn't something that could be fixed by simply resting your body. But when you're told rest is the answer, you begin to believe it's the only solution. You stay quiet. You stay still. You are told that rest will cure you, your body, your mind, your heart. But instead, you feel like a prisoner of your own weariness, locked away in a room filled with nothing but time. And yet, there's still this underlying tension, this feeling that the rest, the quiet, the doing nothing is somehow the greatest punishment. There's a loneliness that comes with being told to stay in bed. People visit, yes, but they don't really understand. They ask if you're feeling better, but what they mean is, have you followed doctor's orders? They don't want to know how your mind races when it's quiet, how you're trapped inside yourself. It's not that you don't want to get better. It's just that you don't think this rest will solve anything. Maybe it'll give you temporary relief, but it won't fix the growing pile of emotions that have nowhere to go. No one sees that. No one seems to care, because in those days, no one was asking about mental health. Women were supposed to rest, look pretty, and not complain. Your fears were pushed aside, and your pain was chalked up to nothing more than nerves, too much work, or a lack of proper rest. But here you are, lying in bed. The days are long and drawn out, the hours blending into one another. You try to sleep, to drift away, but your mind won't stop running. You wonder what the world is doing while you're here, stuck under these blankets. How much longer will this last? Will you ever feel like yourself again? Sometimes you think about the advice you've been given. A little rest, they say. Just a little rest. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is the way to heal. But it's hard to feel hopeful when all you've ever known is to silence your own pain, to swallow your fears, and to play the part of the woman who just needs rest. And then you hear it, a knock at the door, soft but persistent. It's your neighbor, bringing you soup. She smiles at you, asks how you're feeling, and says, "A little rest will do wonders, you know." It's the same thing you've heard over and over, but this time it feels different. She means well, of course, but something about it feels too simple, too easy, as if the answer to everything really is that simple: rest. But there's so much more to it. And yet, you don't say anything. You just nod, smile, and thank her. The days stretch on, and the doctor's advice echoes in your mind like a mantra: rest, rest, rest. But nothing changes. The exhaustion doesn't go away, and neither do the worries that cloud your mind. The world outside continues to turn, and you're stuck here, wondering when, or if, you'll ever feel like yourself again. The thing is, you've learned something through all of this. Rest may heal the body, but it doesn't always heal the heart. Sometimes the soul needs more than just quiet. Sometimes it needs to be heard, to be understood, to be allowed to speak its truth without fear of dismissal. And maybe that's the real cure. Not just rest, but space to breathe, to feel, and to be. In the end, it wasn't comfort that helped you heal. It was the acceptance of the fact that the world doesn't have all the answers. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is stop pretending that it does. The rest was just the beginning of your journey, one where you would eventually find your voice, and maybe, just maybe, allow yourself to be more than just a woman in bed waiting to be fixed. It wasn't comfort, but it was life. And somehow, it was enough. The wind howls, the fire crackles softly, and you lie in your bed, swaddled in thick blankets. But it's not the cold you're feeling, it's something deeper, something inside you, tightening like a knot that refuses to loosen. You try to shake it off, this gnawing, unsettling feeling that seems to wrap itself around your chest, but it doesn't work. The air in the room feels too thick, your heart races, and your thoughts race with it. But there's no name for this. Not really, not here, not in this time. You've been told to calm down, to get some rest, but that doesn't help either. The world moves on outside your window, people walking past, going about their business. But you feel like you're stuck, trapped inside your own body, a prisoner of feelings you can't explain. So, you go to the doctor, hoping for an answer, maybe something, anything that might help make sense of the madness inside your mind. But the man sitting across from you in his stiff chair doesn't offer you comfort. No, he offers something else entirely, a diagnosis. Hysteria, he says, as if it's a perfectly acceptable term, as if it's an answer. A condition of the nerves, a weakness in the female constitution. You're simply overwhelmed. Nothing more. His words hang in the air, heavy and final. Hysteria, the catch-all term for every woman who dared to feel too much, who felt pain, sorrow, fear, or even joy too intensely. It didn't matter what it was. If a woman was too emotional, too fragile, too out of control, there was one explanation that neatly packaged it all up. Hysteria. It's a diagnosis that makes you feel small, like you don't really matter, like your experiences aren't valid. It's an illness you didn't ask for, but one that society and the medical world have decided is yours to bear. There's no room for nuance, no space for understanding the complexities of your mind, your emotions, your pain. Instead, you're told you're weak. Hysteria is your punishment, your cross to bear. You sit there, eyes wide, as the doctor talks to you about treatments, rest, isolation, perhaps even a trip to a special sanatorium where women like you can recover from the frailty that defines them. But what he doesn't tell you is that these treatments aren't really treatments at all. They're simply ways to put you in your place, to silence your voice, to make sure you don't cause a stir. After all, a woman with too many opinions, too many emotions, or too many complaints is dangerous, isn't she? Rest, isolation, bed rest, the prescription that's been given to every woman who dares to show signs of distress. Lie in bed, stare at the walls, and wait for the fog in your mind to lift. But no one asks you why you're anxious, why you're crying, why your heart feels as if it's about to burst. No one wonders if it's the weight of being told that you don't matter, that your feelings don't count. No one wonders if it's the constant pressure of living in a world where you're told to be quiet, to smile, to conform. Instead, they slap a diagnosis on you and send you on your way. You return home, your mind swirling with confusion and frustration. Hysteria, the word sticks with you like a thorn you can't remove. It lingers in your thoughts, in the way you move through your day, in the way others look at you, as if now you've become a walking diagnosis. Every time you feel overwhelmed, Every time your emotions seem to spiral out of control, you wonder, is this it? Is this hysteria? You can't talk about it. You can't tell anyone what you're really feeling because the world doesn't want to hear it. They've already decided what's wrong with you. You're not allowed to question it. You're not allowed to feel. Instead, you smile and nod, even though inside you're screaming. The treatment options, though, are another story. The isolation they recommend is one of those things that feels less like care and more like punishment. A woman who can't function properly is sent to a place where she is allowed to rest, where she is forced to stay still, to not speak, to not think. The irony isn't lost on you. The cure for what ails you is the very thing that causes it silence. You think about the other women who've been given the same treatment. You wonder what they're doing now, whether they're lying in their beds, waiting for the day they're told they're better, their voices finally quieted. It feels like a cruel game where the rules are designed for you to fail. You wonder if anyone will ever listen to you, truly listen. Will there ever be a time when women are allowed to speak their minds? When their fears and anxieties aren't treated like something that needs to be cured? Will there be a day when a woman can feel and not be labeled as broken or weak or hysterical? For now, you lie in bed. The world spins on, but you're stuck in a loop of silence, forced to wait for something, anything, that might make the diagnosis disappear. But deep down, you know it's not just the diagnosis that's the problem. It's the world that sees you as too much to handle, as something to be fixed, something to be tamed. And yet, you can't help but wonder, what if you're not broken? What if there's nothing to fix? What if, for once, someone listened, really listened, and understood that you're just a woman, no more, no less, struggling to make sense of a world that doesn't make any sense? In the end, there's nothing hysterical about that. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most dangerous thing of all. The wind howls outside, and the flickering light of a single candle dances across the walls of the room. You're lying in bed, covered in blankets that feel too heavy for your body. Your limbs ache, and your thoughts race faster than your heart. You can't seem to quiet your mind or still the restless feeling deep in your chest. But no one will understand. No one ever does. The doctor enters, his coat heavy with the weight of years spent diagnosing others, but never really seeing the person in front of him. His face is set in a mask of practiced indifference, the kind of expression that tells you he's heard it all before. He barely looks at you as he shuffles papers on his desk, then looks up long enough to tell you something you've heard far too many times. It's your womb, he says. It's acting up again. There it is. The classic diagnosis. Your womb. Everything about you, the pain, the confusion, the fear, reduced to something so simple, so neat, as if your body was only ever meant to serve a singular purpose. The womb. It is the source of everything, the answer to all your ills, the reason for every emotion, every disorder, every tear. Your heart races as his words echo in your ears. It's your womb. It doesn't matter that your mind feels like it's coming undone, that your body seems to rebel at every turn. No, the problem lies in your womb, the very thing that makes you a woman, the very thing that defines your existence. If there's something wrong with you, it's because of it. And so it goes, time and time again. Women have been taught to accept that their physical and emotional struggles come from a single, unavoidable source, the womb. It doesn't matter if you're overwhelmed, exhausted, anxious, or even in pain, your womb is to blame. It's a convenient little scapegoat, one that's been around for centuries, always waiting in the wings to take the fall for everything. That can't be easily explained. The idea that women's wombs were the root of all their troubles isn't new. It's as old as time. Doctors and men of influence have long used this theory to dismiss the very real struggles of women, to reduce them to nothing more than their reproductive organs. Anything from emotional instability to physical pain could be attributed to female hysteria, a catch all term that said more about the doctor's ignorance than the actual condition. When a woman complained of feeling tired or sad or nervous, she was simply told that her womb was out of balance. Your uterus is too cold, they'd say, or your womb is too hot. It's not working properly. And just like that, the woman's voice was drowned out. Her concerns, her fears were dismissed because her body had one job, and anything that didn't fit into that neatly packaged purpose, marriage, motherhood, submission, was her womb's fault. You feel the weight of that judgment now, as the doctor's words hang in the air. The blame has shifted, and once again, it falls squarely on you. The very thing that makes you a woman is the reason you're broken. It's not that you've been overworked or ignored or neglected. No, it's your womb. And with a simple sentence, the doctor has handed you your fate. There's no need to ask questions, no need to explore your thoughts or feelings. It's all about your body. The diagnosis is already clear, and now the solution is simple. You need rest. You need isolation. You need to be fixed. But how could they possibly know? How could they understand that it's not just your body that hurts, but your soul? How could they grasp the constant weight of existing as a woman in a world that tells you your only value lies in your womb's ability to bear children, to keep the world turning? The blame game continues. Even when you leave the doctor's office, even when you walk back into your life, the idea that your womb controls everything you feel becomes internalized. It becomes the voice inside your head whispering that you're not allowed to be sad, to be anxious, to be angry, to be anything other than calm, quiet, and content. Your womb, they say, should work in perfect harmony, a delicate balance that determines your worth. But life isn't always neat. Life is messy, complicated, and confusing. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you fit into the box, that you don't stray too far from the ideal. And if you do, it's your womb's fault. As the years go on, this message doesn't change. Women continue to be told that their pain is not real, that their fears are nothing more than overactive imaginations, that their emotions are simply the result of a malfunctioning body part, something that can be fixed, corrected, silenced. After all, if you're a woman, your body exists for a singular purpose. Anything outside of that, anything that disrupts the calm, orderly life that's expected of you, is a failure of your womb. And the worst part? You begin to believe it. You begin to think that you're the problem, that you're broken, that the pain you feel is a result of something you can't control. Your womb has become the ultimate scapegoat. It's easier that way. It's easier to put the blame on something you can't change, something that can never be fixed, than to face the truth that women have been silenced for centuries, their voices ignored, their struggles dismissed. But somewhere, deep down, you begin to wonder, what if it's not your womb? What if the problem lies not in your body, but in the world that constantly seeks to control it, to make it fit into neat little boxes? What if the pain isn't because of your womb, but because of a system that has spent centuries telling you that you are only as valuable as the role you play in it? The truth is, your womb is not to blame. It never was. It was never the cause of your pain. You were simply looking for a way to explain it, a way to make sense of a world that doesn't care for you. The real culprit isn't your body. It's the world's refusal to see you as whole, to see you as more than just an object, a vessel for reproduction. The next time someone tells you it's your womb, remind them it's not the womb, it's the world. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for that to change. The wind howls, rattling the thin glass of the window, but inside, everything is still. You're lying in bed, the weight of the blankets pressing down on you like the world itself. Your chest feels tight, and you can't shake the sense that something is wrong, that something deep inside you is unraveling. But what is it? What's wrong with you? You've been told for as long as you can remember that it's just nerves, that you're just a little nervous. It's a catch all term, really. Nervous can mean anything. It can mean you're too emotional, too sensitive, or just not strong enough to handle life. It's a diagnosis that doesn't really tell you anything except that you're not quite right. You're a little broken, a little off center, and if you just pull yourself together, everything will be fine. But you know it's not that simple. You know it's more than just nerves. What you're feeling isn't just a case of being easily startled or a little anxious. It's more than that. It's a constant tightness in your chest, a feeling of dread that won't go away, a mind that races and stumbles over itself, searching for answers that never seem to come. It's like you're stuck inside your own head, spinning in circles, trapped in your own thoughts. And when you try to explain it to someone, they just smile and nod, saying, "Oh, you're just nervous." Nervous. The word hangs in the air like a gentle cloud, as if it's nothing to worry about, as if it's just something you can shake off with a deep breath. But there's more to it, isn't there? There's more to the feeling than just a nervous twitch or a momentary unease. You know that deep down. When they say nervous conditions, they don't mean what they think they mean. They don't mean that you're just a little on edge or that your mind needs to relax. No, what they really mean is that you, as a woman, are not allowed to feel anything too strongly. You're not allowed to feel fear or anger or sadness. You're not allowed to question the world, to ask for more, to feel the weight of everything on your shoulders and admit that it's too much. Nervous conditions is just a euphemism, a safe, soft word to explain away something that they can't or won't understand. It's a word that dismisses your entire existence. It's not about your body or your mind. It's about your place in the world. If you're nervous, if you're anxious, if you're constantly on edge, It's because something is wrong with you, something you're supposed to hide, supposed to swallow, supposed to bear in silence. What they really mean when they say nervous conditions is that your emotions are inconvenient, that your thoughts are disruptive. They don't want to know about the weight you carry every day, about the constant battle you face between what the world expects of you and what you're actually feeling. They don't want to hear about the subtle, constant pressure of trying to fit into a world that doesn't leave room for you to be anything other than calm, collected, and in control. You think about the times you've been told you're nervous by people who don't understand, who don't see you at all. Your friends, your family, the doctor, none of them see the hours you spend alone, trying to make sense of the world, trying to navigate a life that feels like it's constantly slipping away from you. They don't understand that nervous isn't just a feeling, it's a symptom. It's the outward sign of something deeper, something they refuse to acknowledge. It's the weight of centuries of expectations. It's the feeling of being trapped, of being told to stay small, to stay quiet, to be just enough, but never too much, never too loud, never too emotional, never too visible. Because if you are any of those things, you're branded as nervous, as if there's something wrong with you for wanting to speak, to express, to feel. When they say nervous conditions, what they really mean is that you're living in a world that doesn't want you to be anything more than what they think you should be. A world that doesn't want to hear your pain, your fears, your struggles. A world that doesn't want you to be honest about the fact that sometimes it's just too much. That sometimes the world asks too much of you and you can't keep up. But if you admit it, if you speak the truth, they'll call you nervous. They'll call you weak. They'll tell you it's just your nerves and send you on your way. But that's not what it is. You know it. You know that you're not just nervous. You're tired. Tired of being told to be quiet. Tired of being expected to carry everything without ever being allowed to show that it hurts. You're angry, angry that your emotions are always dismissed, that your fears are always reduced to nothing more than a condition. You're frustrated, frustrated by a world that refuses to see you as more than your nervous state, that refuses to listen to what you truly need. So, the next time someone tells you that you're just nervous, that it's just a passing condition, remember that they don't understand. They don't see the weight you carry, the endless demands of a world that doesn't give you space to breathe. They don't see how your heart races, how your mind spins, how your soul feels like it's suffocating under the pressure. What they really mean when they say nervous conditions is that they don't want to understand you. But maybe it's time you stopped letting them define you. It's not your nerves that are the problem, it's the world. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop letting them call it anything less than what it really is. The wind howls, its cold breath creeping through the cracks in the window, but the chill you feel is nothing compared to the one running through your veins. You lie there beneath a thick quilt, the weight of the fabric not nearly enough to bury the heaviness inside you. The sensation isn't new, it's familiar, creeping, sneaking up behind you every time you feel like you can breathe. A tightness in your chest, flutter in your stomach, a sense that everything is about to collapse. You've felt it before, and you'll feel it again. But what is it? What's happening to you? What does it mean when your body betrays you like this? When your heart beats too quickly? When your thoughts spiral into a maze that you can't seem to escape? You've been told it's just anxiety. It's all in your head, they say, like it's something you can turn on and off. They don't get it. The people who offer their helpful words, they don't feel it. They don't understand the suffocating tightness, the flood of emotions that rise without warning, the overwhelming urge to escape a world that feels too loud, too fast, too much. And then there are the others, the ones who think they know better, the ones with their medical degrees and their experience, the ones who know how to fix things. You go to the doctor, desperate for an answer, but all you get is the same diagnosis you've heard 100 times before. Hysteria, hysteria. The word feels like a slap, as if your emotions are nothing but an inconvenient, unruly mess that needs to be subdued. It's a word that doesn't mean anything specific, a blanket term that covers everything from anxiety to sadness, from fear to frustration, without ever really understanding what's behind it. Hysteria, they say, is just a woman's condition. It's emotional instability. It's weakness. You'll feel better after some rest, a little time away from the stresses of life. They don't see you. They don't see the hours you spend in your own head, fighting against the pressure to act normal, to appear composed, to wear the mask that society demands. They don't see the way your thoughts collide with each other, how the noise in your mind drowns out the quiet moments, how the feeling of suffocation follows you everywhere. But hysteria doesn't capture that. It can't. It's too easy, too simple. It's a term that gets rid of the mess, the complications, the real struggles. It tells you that your emotions are wrong, that they're too much, and that you're not allowed to feel this way, that it's just a woman's thing, something that happens because your body is weaker, your mind more fragile, and that, they say, is the explanation. But how is that an explanation? How is it that something so fundamental to being human, emotion, is stripped down to a condition that's meant to be fixed, erased, and ignored? Why is it that your anxiety, your sadness, your fears are dismissed as something to be silenced, to be cured? And if they can't cure it, they tell you it's your fault. They tell you it's just your body acting up, your hormones out of balance, your uterus too restless. What does that even mean? That your anxiety is because of your womb, that your feelings, your mind, your pain are nothing more than the result of something biological, something that has nothing to do with who you are, what you feel, or how the world is shaping you. You want to scream, to tell them that it's not hysteria, not some random outburst of emotion that can be tucked away with a few days of rest. What you feel is real. What you feel is valid, but they don't want to hear that. They don't want to listen, because if they do, they'd have to confront the uncomfortable truth that the world has created a space where women's emotions are treated as inconveniences, as anomalies, as something that doesn't fit into the neat, tidy boxes of what's considered acceptable. What if this wasn't hysteria at all? What if it's just human emotion? What if your anxiety isn't some medical condition to be fixed, but simply a response to a world that has demanded too much of you, that has tried to box you in, that has refused to let you be? What if the problem isn't with you, but with The way you've been taught to suppress, to ignore, to hide what you feel because it's not allowed. In a world that teaches women to be quiet, to be still, to be gentle, isn't it any wonder that when we finally crack, when the pressure becomes too much to bear, we are labeled as hysterical? Isn't it any wonder that the moment we show our emotions, our true feelings, we are seen as broken, as too much, as something to be fixed? Maybe the problem isn't the emotions themselves. Maybe it's the way the world refuses to allow us to express them. Maybe it's the way society tells us that we are weak for feeling too strongly, for being human. But being human is messy, it's complicated, it's loud, and it's not something that can be reduced to a single diagnosis. The next time someone tells you it's just hysteria, remember this: your feelings are not something to be fixed. Your anxiety is not an inconvenience, and your emotions, no matter how chaotic they may seem, are real. They are a part of you, and they are just as valid as anyone else's. What's really wrong is not you, but a world that still refuses to understand the complexity of the human experience, particularly when it comes to women. You are not hysterical. You are not broken. You are human. And that, in all its messy, complicated beauty, is exactly as it should be. The wind howls outside, and the fire flickers weakly in the hearth, its warmth doing little to chase away the cold that's crept into your bones. You lie in bed, shivering, not from the cold, but from the heaviness that's settled deep within you. Your head aches, your body feels like it's been pulled in 1,000 directions, and every movement seems to cost more energy than you can spare. You've been feeling this way for days, maybe longer. It's hard to tell. The fever comes and goes, but the weakness stays, like a shadow that refuses to leave. It's not just your body that's hurting, it's everything. Your thoughts are muddled, your strength sapped, and you're not sure how much longer you can keep pretending to be okay. The weight of it all presses down on you, suffocating you. But you've heard the whispers. You've heard what the doctor says. It's the humors. The balance is off. We need to let the blood out, and you'll feel better. It's a cure that's worked for centuries. Bloodletting. It's a simple solution, really, and so many others have tried it. The idea that draining some of your blood will rid your body of illness is something you've heard more times than you can count. It sounds almost medieval, because it is. But there's something strangely comforting about the simplicity of it. If you just give up a little blood, surely it will restore the balance, right? The doctor, a man whose expertise seems to come from books and theories rather than real experience, assures you that it's the best course of action. He speaks with the kind of certainty that makes you feel like there's no room for doubt. He stands there, looking down at you with his stethoscope and his precise movements, explaining that your illness is a result of too much blood, or perhaps the wrong type of blood. Either way, bloodletting will fix it all. If your body is too full or overheated, removing some of it should restore balance, right? Think of it as a reset, he says with a smile, letting the bad humors out, letting the body regain its equilibrium. You want to argue, to ask if there's any other way, but there's no other choice. The world is telling you this is the answer. And in a time where people rely on the wisdom of centuries, you wonder, why not try it? What else could work? You're exhausted, desperate for relief, and this is what you've been given: a cure wrapped in tradition. The doctor prepares his tools. They look ominous, sharp, gleaming instruments designed for the sole purpose of drawing your blood. The thought of it makes your skin crawl. But what else is there to do? What other option do you have? You don't know enough to question it, and the weight of centuries of supposed wisdom presses heavily on your chest. The weight of tradition, the weight of medical knowledge, or what passes for it. As he makes the first incision, you try to breathe, to relax, but it's harder than it sounds. You feel the warm trickle of your own blood as it spills from your body, and with it, you feel something else. Maybe it's relief, maybe it's terror. You can't tell. The pain, at least, is temporary. The relief, if it comes, will be slow. The blood doesn't stop flowing right away, though. He takes what he needs, and you're left there, a bit weaker, a bit emptier than you were before. But what is this really? A cure of bloodletting, a centuries old practice, promised to cleanse you of what ails you. How could draining the very thing that keeps you alive make you feel better? You lie there, wondering if there's any real truth to it, or if you're just another in a long line of people who've trusted in something that was always more about control than cure. As you recover, the days stretch on. You lie in bed, your body still weak, but now something else nags at you: the questioning, the uncertainty. You were told it would help. You were told it would restore balance. And yet, you feel no better than you did before. If anything, you feel worse, tired, drained, and empty, like part of you is missing. They've taken your blood, and with it, a bit of your trust, your faith in the world that promises these cures, but never seems to deliver on the hope they sell. What's worse, that you trusted them, or that you still wonder if it's the best option you had? Because what else could help? What else could you rely on when the world insists that these are the answers, that this is the way forward? The truth is, bloodletting wasn't about curing your disease. It was about controlling your body, your life, your pain. It was a way of turning something you couldn't understand into something manageable, into something that could be neatly explained away. The blood didn't cure you. The idea of it did. As you lie there, reflecting on what's been done to you, you realize how little has changed. They took your blood, your trust, and now your faith. You want to scream, but you're too tired to fight. You wonder how many others have gone through this, how many others have believed in the cure and found themselves no better or worse than they were before. The world tells you it's science, it's tradition, it's wisdom passed down through generations. But what if the real cure isn't in your blood at all? What if it's in questioning what we've been taught, in looking beyond the surface, in daring to ask whether we deserve better than the outdated answers we've been handed? What if the real cure is understanding that sometimes the things we've been told will heal us are the very things that hold us back? It wasn't a cure, it was just a story about blood, about control, about what we think we know. And sometimes those stories are more dangerous than any illness. The wind howls outside, rattling the windows. But inside, the world feels just as trapped. You lie in your bed, the sheets twisted around you, the weight of fatigue sinking deep into your bones. Your body is aching, your mind foggy, and no matter what you do, nothing seems to help. The day stretches out before you, a never ending blur of dull discomfort and restless thoughts. You can feel the pressure building, the exhaustion, the sense that something is wrong. But what is it? What could possibly be the cure? You've been told that rest is the answer, that sleep will restore you. But even the thought of resting seems impossible. You've heard it all before. Get more sleep, drink more water, eat better, and none of it works. So, now, after days of suffering, you're sitting across from the doctor, a man who, for all his fancy degrees and certifications, seems no closer to understanding what's wrong with you than the person next door. Well, he says, looking at you over his glasses with a smug smile, what you really need is more fresh air. You blink. Fresh air? That's the cure? Fresh air, he repeats, his voice steady and confident, as if he's delivering the greatest revelation known to medicine. It's the best cure for fatigue, headaches, and nervous conditions. Take a long walk outside every day. Breathe deeply. Let the fresh air revive you. You sit there, staring at him, trying to hide the disbelief creeping across your face. Fresh air. Really? That's the prescription you're getting after all the pain, the confusion, and the lack of sleep? You want to argue, to explain that there's more going on than simply needing a bit of nature's breeze. But his words ring in your ears, louder than your own voice. Fresh air. He looks at you like he's just solved the world's greatest mystery. What else could he possibly suggest? A walk? In the middle of all this? How does that help you when your body feels like it's shutting down? When you can barely summon the strength to sit up, let alone go for a walk? And yet, this was the prescription given to countless people just like you, centuries ago. Fresh air was a catch-all cure for everything, the magic remedy for all that ailed you. Fatigued? Get some fresh air. Sick? Breathe in deeply. Anxious? Take a stroll through the fields. The world, back then, seemed to think that the solution to all physical and emotional distress was nothing more than a good, long breath outside. No one asked why you were feeling the way you did, or looked deeper into the root of the problem. No, that wasn't necessary. It wasn't a matter of understanding or treating your body or mind with care. It was about offering a simple, easy fix. Fresh air. That's all you needed. The idea was so widespread, so commonly accepted, that it didn't matter how ridiculous it sounded. Doctors, healers, and well-meaning family members all shared the same advice. If you're not feeling well, just breathe the air outside. The world will heal you. The lack of concern for deeper medical issues, the shallow simplicity of the solution says so much about the thinking of the time. It's a prescription based on the assumption that nature itself can correct what is wrong with the human body, without ever considering the true complexities of what ailed you. But as absurd as it sounds now, fresh air was indeed a popular cure for nearly every ailment, from melancholy to nervous conditions. The idea was that open air could balance your humors, purify your body, and cleanse your mind. You were told to open your windows, to step outside, to let the breeze do the work. Maybe it would have been easier to accept if the doctor had said something a little more practical. Eat better, for example, or drink more water. At least those were within your control. But fresh air, something as intangible as the air around you, something as fleeting as the weather itself, it felt like a ridiculous last ditch effort to get you back on your feet. You'd be expected to just inhale the fresh air, hope it worked, and walk away without a single real explanation of why or how it might cure your symptoms. And so, you leave the doctor's office with nothing but his prescription to go outside, breathe deeply, and refresh your spirit. You try not to laugh at how absurd it all sounds, but you can't help it. The world, it seems, had no better remedy for your pain than to tell you to simply breathe. But then again, maybe that's all anyone could offer. Back then, the understanding of the body, the mind, and illness was so limited. Doctors didn't know what you truly needed, what your body and mind required to heal. They had no knowledge of modern medicine, no understanding of mental health, no answers for conditions that were complex, real, and deeply human. All they had were simplistic solutions like fresh air, as if breathing in the world's air could solve every problem under the sun. And while the prescription of fresh air may seem ridiculous today, it was born from a time when people lacked the resources and knowledge to deal with the complexities of health and wellness. What else could they do when they had no answers? When the only thing they could offer was a suggestion to breathe deeply and wait for nature to fix you. So you take the advice. You walk outside, stand in the breeze, and breathe. You try to tell yourself that it's helpful, that the fresh air is somehow working. But deep down, you know that the real solution isn't in the air. It's in understanding your body, your mind, and the truth of what makes you feel unwell. It's in the answers they didn't have. Fresh air, in the end, wasn't a cure. It was the easiest thing they could offer. And sometimes, the easiest answers are the most ridiculous ones of all. The wind howls outside, and you can feel the chill in the air, creeping in through the cracks in the walls. The room feels cold, not just from the weather, but from the silence. The kind of silence that settles in your chest, heavy and uninviting, making it hard to breathe. You've been carrying it with you for days, weeks even. This pressure that won't go away, this weight that presses down on your soul. And yet, no one talks about it. No one dares to say the words that could make it real. The thoughts swirl in your head, but they don't leave your lips. You want to say something. You want to speak up, to share what's been gnawing at you for so long. But the truth is, you don't know how. You've never been given the words, the space, or even the permission to talk about it. In a world where silence is the rule, where emotions are supposed to be tucked away and hidden from view, talking it out was never an option. How could it be? You've been told time and time again that what you're feeling isn't something that deserves to be heard, that it's not something worth discussing. You've been taught that the best thing to do is to swallow it, to push it down, and hope it goes away on its own. The world around you has always had a particular view of what's acceptable for women. and your emotions have never quite fit into those neatly defined boxes. The pressure to be strong, to be composed, to be perfect, it's all too much. But no one wants to hear about the cracks forming beneath the surface, because that would mean acknowledging the vulnerability that no one is willing to face. And so, you suffer in silence. When the burden becomes too heavy, you retreat into yourself, trying to make sense of it all, trying to hold it together, all while knowing that saying the words out loud, asking for help, would only make you seem weak. You know that the moment you speak, the moment you admit that something is wrong, you will be met with the unspoken judgment. Why can't you handle it? They'll ask. What's wrong with you? They'll whisper. And that's enough to keep you silent. You've been told to be strong, to stand tall, to carry your burdens with grace. But nobody ever told you that it's okay to ask for help. Nobody ever told you that it's okay to say that you can't do it alone. And so you carry it all, hiding behind a smile that doesn't reach your eyes, pretending that everything is fine when it's not. The world around you moves on, full of noise and distraction, while you sit in silence. You watch as others speak freely, as they share their troubles, their fears, their joys, and yet you remain quiet, locked in a prison of your own making, because the one thing you've learned is that speaking up, being open, is dangerous. The moment you voice your pain, the moment you express your vulnerability, you risk becoming something less than perfect. You risk being seen for what you really are, a person who is struggling, a person who isn't as strong as they pretend to be, and so you hold it in. You stay quiet, hoping that it will all go away on its own. But it doesn't. It never does. It lingers, festers, and grows until it becomes too much to bear. You wonder sometimes if anyone else feels this way, if anyone else has ever been made to feel that their pain is something that shouldn't be shared, something that shouldn't be spoken of. But the world has no room for such discussions. It's too messy, too uncomfortable, too real. And so, silence becomes the solution. But silence doesn't heal. Silence doesn't fix what's broken inside you. It only makes it worse. It makes the feelings darker, more suffocating, until you can't remember what it feels like to be free of them. The weight grows heavier, and yet you still don't speak. You can't, because you've been taught that your emotions don't matter, that they're inconvenient, that they don't deserve to be heard. When talking it out was out of the question, you were left with nothing but your own mind to battle, your thoughts, your fears, your pain, trapped inside with nowhere to go, no one to listen, no one to understand. You wonder, as you sit in the silence, if things would be different if someone had just asked, just once, how you were really doing. If someone had made the space for you to speak your truth, to express what you were feeling, what would have happened then? But it doesn't happen. No one asks, no one listens, and so you stay silent, locked inside your own world, trying to hold it all together, wondering if anyone else feels as alone as you do. And yet, even in that silence, there's a part of you that knows it doesn't have to be this way. There's a part of you that dreams of a world where talking it out is no longer out of the question, where your voice matters, where your feelings are seen and understood. But for now, that world seems far away, and all you have is the silence. It's not the solution, but it's what you've been given. And sometimes that's enough to keep going, even when the words you so desperately need remain trapped inside. The wind howls outside, its chilling breath rattling the glass, but inside, the air feels heavy in its own way, a quiet, suffocating weight that settles deep within your chest. You lie there, the blankets tangled around your body, a physical manifestation of the restlessness that churns within you. Your mind is racing, your thoughts colliding in a chaotic dance. The weight of everything seems too much to carry, and yet you're told to keep it together, to hold it in, to stay quiet. You've been here before, in this space where your voice feels like it's too much, too loud, too disruptive. So you try to keep it in. You've learned that the world doesn't have room for your pain, your anger, your fears. Instead, they tell you what you need: quiet, rest, healing. Healing, they say, comes with stillness, with silence, with retreating into yourself and away from the noise. But here's the irony: healing in their eyes doesn't involve understanding or speaking about the things that weigh on you. No, it means you stay silent, still, and hidden. In the name of healing, they quiet your voice, your very means of expressing your experience, and then wonder why you can't seem to get better. When you're suffering, when the weight of the world feels too much to bear, the advice is always the same. You need some rest. You need time to reflect. You need to be alone to heal. What they don't tell you is that healing isn't just about taking a break or retreating from the world. It's about being seen. It's about being heard. It's about speaking your truth and finding comfort in the act of expressing your pain. But instead, you are taught to hush, to suppress the very things that are eating away at you. You're taught that your anger, your sadness, your frustration, all those real, raw emotions are too much. You're taught that healing means turning inward, withdrawing into a shell, and silencing yourself. The more you're told to quiet down, the more your soul feels like it's screaming to be heard. The real irony lies in this: in the name of healing, they've taken away your power to heal. They've turned your voice into something dangerous, something that's too loud, too disruptive, something that needs to be controlled. You, a woman with thoughts and emotions, are silenced, muted by a world that tells you that speaking up only makes things worse. But the truth is, speaking up is the first step in healing. Hiding your voice, suppressing your emotions, that's what makes it worse. That's what feeds the suffering. And yet, in the name of healing, they demand that you hide it all. You're supposed to rest, retreat, and let time do its work while your voice stays trapped inside. You're supposed to be patient and gentle and never raise a word in anger or frustration. But what happens when your emotions are too powerful to be contained? What happens when your pain is too much to swallow? You know the answer. It doesn't go away. The silence doesn't fix it. The quiet doesn't heal you. It only builds walls around your voice, trapping it in a place where it can't reach anyone, least of all, yourself. The very act of quieting women's voices, of telling them to retreat and hold their pain in, is an ironic twist, because in silencing you, they are ignoring the very thing that could help you heal: the freedom to express what's really going on inside. Healing isn't about hiding your feelings. It's about giving them room to breathe, about allowing them to be seen and heard so that they don't poison you from the inside out, and so you stay quiet. You take your rest, you retreat, and you wait for the healing to come. But as the days pass, you realize that it's not the silence that brings peace. It's the conversation, it's the sharing, it's the act of speaking and having someone listen. You need that. You need to be heard. You need to be seen. And in denying yourself that, you deny the very process that could save you. The irony of it all is stark. In the name of healing, they've taken away the one thing that could set you free. In trying to fix you, they've told you that your voice isn't worth listening to. And yet, your voice is the key. It always has been. Healing is not about retreating into silence. It's about speaking your truth, about sharing your pain, about breaking the chains that bind you in fear. The real cure is not in silence, but in the freedom to express, to share, to be understood. And maybe, just maybe, the world will learn that in the name of healing, it's the quieting of women's voices that needs to end. The wind howls outside, cold and unrelenting, but inside, the air feels suffocating in its own way. You lie in your bed, the sheets heavy against your body, a weight you cannot escape. The stillness of the room mirrors the stillness inside you, a quiet desperation, a battle between the emotions swirling within and the silence you're expected to keep. You try to breathe deeply, to find some kind of relief, but it's as if the air itself refuses to give you the space to exhale. This is the way it has been for days, weeks even. Your thoughts, your feelings, they become a storm inside you, threatening to break free. But each time you feel them coming, you push them down. You've been taught, for as long as you can remember, that too much feeling is dangerous. Too much emotion is unseemly. And now you're here in a room, alone, expected to be still and quiet, because in their eyes, too much feeling is something that needs to be controlled. You've heard the whispers. They've talked about your nervous disposition, your fragile constitution. You've been told time and time again that your emotions, your feelings, are too much to bear. Your tears, your outbursts, your anger, they're all signs of something wrong with you, something that needs to be fixed. And so they locked you away because a woman who cannot control her emotions is a threat. A woman who feels too much is a danger to herself and to everyone around her. You think about the doctor's words as you sit in the cold, silent room. He had looked at you with pity, with a sense of calm detachment, as though your pain was an inconvenience to be managed rather than a real experience to be understood. He'd called it hysteria, a word that felt as suffocating as the walls around you. He didn't want to know why you were upset. He didn't care to understand the pressure you lived under, the crushing weight of expectations. Instead, he offered the same prescription he gave to so many women before you. Rest, he had said. Isolation, he had instructed. Quiet. But what you needed wasn't quiet. What you needed wasn't isolation. What you needed was to speak, to express the flood of emotions that lived inside you. But you knew that wasn't allowed. Too much feeling was a problem that needed to be contained. not released. And so, here you are, in a room where no one will listen, where no one will hear your thoughts. You're expected to lie still, to be silent, to calm down. But what happens when the feelings inside you cannot be stilled? What happens when the emotions, the anxiety, the grief, the frustration cannot be locked away any longer? Back then, the solution wasn't to understand, to talk it out, to give women the space to feel without judgment. No, the solution was simple: lock them away, put them in a room where they wouldn't disrupt the peace, where their emotions wouldn't disturb the order of things. A woman who was too emotional, who couldn't fit neatly into the mold of quiet, passive femininity, was considered a problem, one that needed to be managed, suppressed, and hidden from the world. You wonder, as you sit there in the silence, if anyone has ever truly understood the depth of what you're feeling. Has anyone ever seen that your anger is not unreasonable, that your sadness is not unwarranted, that your frustration is not a sign of weakness, but of humanity? Has anyone ever given you the space to be human, to express your feelings without the fear of being dismissed as hysterical? But no, instead, they locked you away. They made you feel as though your very humanity, your ability to feel deeply, to experience the world with passion, was something that needed to be controlled. They told you that too much feeling wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. They told you that your emotions had no place in society, that they didn't belong in the public eye, that they were a reflection of your weakness. And now, here you are, locked away in a room that smells faintly of mildew and cold stone, wondering how long it will be before someone decides your treatment is enough. How long will it be before they say you're cured of your hysteria, before they let you return to a life where you are told to remain silent, to remain still, to remain calm? The irony is striking. In the name of healing, they silenced you. In the name of fixing what they deemed to be wrong with you, they took away your voice, your freedom, and your ability to speak your truth. What they didn't understand was that your feelings weren't the problem. It was their refusal to acknowledge that everyone has feelings, that emotions are not weaknesses, but parts of the human experience. What they didn't understand was that the key to your healing wasn't in locking you away, but in letting you speak, letting you be heard. As you sit there, alone in the cold room, you realize something. The true tragedy isn't just the confinement, the isolation. It's that they thought they could cure you by silencing you. They thought that if they kept you quiet, if they kept you still, they could take away the pain, take away the anger, take away the humanity that made you who you are. But they were wrong, because your voice is not a threat. Your emotions are not a burden. Your feelings are valid, and they deserve to be expressed, not hidden away. No one should have to be locked away for feeling too much. No one should be told that their humanity is something to be fixed, to be corrected, to be erased. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop locking women away for their feelings. Maybe it's time to let them speak, to listen, to understand. Because when we stop silencing each other, we open the door to true healing. And that's the only cure that will ever matter. The wind howls outside, shaking the walls of the house. You lie in bed, tangled in the covers, the silence around you suffocating. The world outside moves at its usual pace, but inside, time seems to crawl, each second stretching longer than the last. The faint tick of the clock echoes through the stillness, marking the hours as they pass, but your mind refuses to settle. You feel exhausted, worn down, as if every ounce of energy has been sucked from you. But rest, true rest, seems impossible. You can't escape the feeling that something isn't quite right, something deep inside you. But the world has a simple prescription: rest. This is the rest cure, the treatment that's been offered to countless women like you, the cure for everything from exhaustion to melancholy, from anxiety to nervous conditions. It's a popular remedy, one that's supposed to heal, to reset, to restore you to a state of balance. Take a break, they say. Lie down, rest, and let your body heal itself. It sounds so simple, so peaceful, a time to do nothing but recover. And yet, when you lie in that bed, under the weight of the blankets, the silence feels more like a prison than a remedy. You've been told that rest is all you need. The doctor's orders were clear. You need to rest. He didn't ask much more. He didn't want to know about the stress, the worries, the mental strain. No, he simply prescribed rest. No more activities, no more stress, no more thinking, just silence, just stillness. It's a cure that, on the surface, seems harmless enough. In fact, it's sold as a solution. But as the hours turn to days, you can't help but wonder, is this really helping? Or is it hurting? There's something ironic about it all. The advice to lie down, to retreat from the world, is supposed to give you time to heal, but instead, it feels like you're being cut off from everything that could help. No conversations, no work, no distractions, just the heavy weight of your thoughts. You're not allowed to engage with the world, to express what you're going through. Instead, you're told to be silent, still, and patient, waiting for time to do its work. At first, it feels like a break, a chance to rest, to escape the pressures of life, to take a step back. But then, as the days drag on, you begin to feel the oppressive nature of this rest. It's as if you're being forced into a box, into a prescribed role, a life where you are no longer allowed to be an active participant in your own healing. Instead, you are passive, waiting for your body to catch up while the world continues to spin without you. The rest cure is sold as a gentle, healing solution. But what it really does is shut down everything that makes you feel like yourself. It shuts down your mind, your body, your ability to connect with others. You're not allowed to work, to think, to express your frustrations or fears. You are supposed to lie there and wait for the feeling to pass, for the rest to make it all go away. But that's the problem, isn't it? You've been told to stop thinking, stop feeling, stop engaging with the world, as if that will somehow fix what's wrong. But what if it's not the body that needs to be fixed? What if the problem lies in the fact that your life is being reduced to a passive existence, a state where you're no longer allowed to feel, to express, or to be you? The rest cure promises healing, but in many ways, it's more about control than recovery. It keeps you in a state of stillness, a state where you are forced to conform to the idea that doing nothing is the solution to everything. And while it may offer some temporary relief from the weight of the world, it doesn't address the deeper needs, the need for expression, for release, for connection. By locking you in a room, telling you to be quiet, to stay still, it denies you the very thing that could help you heal, the ability to speak your truth. What's more, this rest cure is a one size fits all solution. It's a treatment designed with no room for individuality, no recognition of what actually helps each person. For some, rest may be necessary, a time to recuperate and recharge. But for others, rest becomes a trap, a reminder of how little space the world has for their struggles. It's as if, in prescribing rest, they're saying that you have nothing to offer the world at the moment, that your worth is found only in how still and silent you can be. The irony of it all is that the rest, cure, while sold as a remedy for exhaustion, is actually a form of disempowerment. It tells you that the way to heal is to become passive, to surrender yourself to a world that doesn't understand you, a world that wants you to remain quiet and still, without ever asking what you really need. In trying to fix your mind and body, it robs you of the most important thing, your agency, your voice, your ability to say, I need help, I need to speak, I need to be seen. What if the cure isn't in the stillness, but in the movement? What if healing comes not from laying down, but from standing up, speaking out, and reclaiming your voice? The world has long prescribed silence as the cure for women's struggles, but silence has never healed anyone. It only deepens the wounds, turning them into scars that never get the chance to heal. And so, you lie in bed, under the weight of blankets that feel like chains, wondering how much longer you will have to wait for the cure to take hold. You wonder if it's really helping, or if it's just another way to silence you, to keep you small, to keep you quiet. Maybe the real cure isn't in resting at all. Maybe it's in speaking up. The wind howls outside, shaking the window panes and sending an icy draft through the room. Inside, you lie in bed, feeling a cold that has nothing to do with the temperature. The restlessness inside you twists tighter, sharper, with each passing second. Your mind races through 1,000 thoughts, none of which seem to make sense. There's a tightness in your chest, a flutter of fear in your stomach, and yet you can't explain why. You just feel it. You feel everything all at once, too much to carry, but no one seems to care about what's happening inside. Instead, they tell you what's wrong with you is simple, your behavior. For centuries, the world has told women that their anxiety, their worries, their struggles were not just physical or emotional, they were moral failings. If you were a woman and something was wrong with you, it was not the result of external pressures, overwhelming stress, or complex emotions. No, it was because you were not behaving correctly, because you were too sensitive, too emotional, too out of control. The doctor's office is quiet, save for the soft scratching of his pen as he takes notes. He looks at you, assessing you with an air of clinical detachment. You're feeling anxious, you say? He asks, his voice steady, almost bored. He doesn't ask why. He doesn't ask about your life, your experiences, the pressures you face. No, what matters is this: your behavior. You need to learn to control yourself, he says. Your mind is too restless, too active. It's a result of your inability to manage your impulses, your emotional weakness. Women, especially women like you, need to learn the virtue of calmness. He doesn't say it outright, but it's clear. Your anxiety isn't a symptom of a world that doesn't understand you. It's a moral flaw, a lack of discipline, a failure to behave according to the standards of society. You are the problem. Your mind is the problem. It's not about external forces, your circumstances, or the truth of your inner experience. No, it's about how you carry yourself, how you choose to behave. And so, he prescribes the usual: rest, isolation, and above all, silence. The idea is that if you quiet your mind, if you force yourself to be still, you will somehow find peace. But it's not about healing you. It's about forcing you to conform, to obey, to be a woman who is quiet, who is calm, who behaves herself in ways that society deems proper. The real irony here is that the treatment for your anxiety is not designed to understand you. It's designed to make you conform to the idea of what a woman should be. Your anxiety is not a sign of stress, not a reflection of your lived experiences. It's a reflection of your behavior. And as long as you can't control yourself, as long as you can't behave properly, you are broken, you are flawed, and you are unfit to live a normal, healthy life. The doctor doesn't want to hear about the pressures you face, societal expectations, gender roles, the weight of constantly being told that your worth is defined by your appearance, your behavior, your submission. He doesn't ask about the constant noise in your life, the world that demands you stay quiet, stay still, stay small. He doesn't care. What matters is that you're not living up to the ideal of calmness and composure. You're anxious because you are a woman who cannot control herself. But it's not about control, it's about survival. It's about existing in a world that has always told you that who you are, your emotions, your struggles, your voice are too much, that your feelings are dangerous, that your being is something to be tamed. You wonder, as you lie there, if anyone has ever considered that your anxiety isn't just the result of your actions, but of the world's actions, that the pressures placed on women to behave in ways that are unnatural, to conform to ideals that were never made for them, are what causes this constant, gnawing anxiety. But no one listens to you. No one listens to the truth of what you're feeling. Instead, they keep telling you to behave, to silence yourself, to control what's inside. The history of women's anxiety is the history of moral judgment, of being told that if you feel too much, you're doing something wrong. If you cry, if you feel nervous, if you act out, it's not because you're human, it's because you've failed in your duty to be composed, to be calm, to be the image of the ideal woman. You're not allowed to be real. You're only allowed to be what others want you to be. But deep down, you know this isn't the truth. You know your feelings aren't flaws. Your anxiety isn't a moral failure. It's a response. It's a cry for help in a world that refuses to hear you. It's a sign that something isn't right, not with you, but with the world that demands too much and gives too little. Your anxiety isn't a result of your behavior. It's a result of the behavior of a world that insists you stay silent, Stay still, stay small. It's a response to the pressure that comes from living in a society that doesn't value your voice, your emotions, your humanity. And maybe, just maybe, the real cure is not in controlling your behavior, not in silencing your mind. Maybe the cure is in letting you be, letting you feel, letting you speak, letting you exist without fear of judgment, without the weight of expectations that were never meant for you to carry. In a world that ties women's anxiety to their behavior, the real healing begins when women are finally allowed to be themselves, uncontrolled, uncontained, and unapologetically human. The wind howls outside, rattling the windows, but inside, the room is still, almost too still. You lie back, the soft fabric of the chair cradling your body, and close your eyes. Your mind is a whirlwind, a constant swirl of thoughts and worries that never seem to quiet down. You've tried everything else, the pills, the potions, the long winded advice from every doctor you've seen. Nothing has worked. You feel like you're running out of options, and the doctor, with his calm voice and reassuring words, has finally suggested something else. Hypnosis. Just relax, he says. Let go of the tension. Let your mind drift. You want to trust him. You want to believe that this could be the answer, the thing that will finally bring you the peace you've been searching for. But in the back of your mind, a question lingers. Is this the last resort, or just another fad that won't work? Hypnosis, they say, is a powerful tool, a way to access the unconscious mind and unlock the power to heal, to change, to reset your thoughts and behaviors. But what does it really mean? Is it magic? A trick of the mind? Or is it just the latest trend that everyone's buying into because they're desperate for a solution, any solution, to their overwhelming anxiety? You think back to the many treatments you've tried. Some worked for a little while, but nothing ever lasted. Each time, you felt hopeful at first, believing that this time, this treatment would finally make you feel whole again. And yet, here you are, still searching for that elusive fix, that thing that will bring you the relief you so desperately need. The doctor's voice cuts through your thoughts. Focus on your breathing, in and out. His words become a soft, rhythmic lullaby, the kind of soothing sound that makes everything else fade into the background. You try to listen, to follow his instructions, to let your mind drift as he suggests. But something inside you resists. You can't help but wonder if this is just another temporary fix, something that promises the world but leaves you with nothing when it's over. Hypnosis is often seen as a last resort, the final attempt when nothing else works. It's the thing you turn to when you've exhausted all your options, when you're so desperate for relief that you'll try anything, even something that feels a little strange. It's supposed to tap into the deepest parts of your mind, to access the areas that logic and willpower can't reach. But can it really work? Or is it just a fleeting experience, a placebo, a fad that's been hyped up and marketed to the desperate? As the doctor guides you deeper into relaxation, you wonder if anyone truly understands what you're going through. If anyone knows what it's like to have your thoughts spinning out of control, to feel like you're suffocating under the weight of your own mind. Hypnosis promises relief, a way to disconnect from the chaos, to find peace within. But can something so simple, so intangible, really make a difference? The problem is that hypnosis, for all its appeal, is hard to measure. It's not like a pill you can swallow or a therapy session where you can track progress. It's a deeply personal experience, one that's different for everyone. For some, it works like magic. They leave feeling lighter, freer, with a sense of calm that they've never experienced before. For others, it's nothing more than an hour spent in a chair, trying to focus on a voice that doesn't seem to do anything. It's hit or miss, and it's hard to tell if the results are real or if you just want to believe they are. And yet, in that quiet room, as the doctor speaks in soothing tones, you can feel something shifting inside you. Maybe it's just the act of letting go, of surrendering control for a moment. Maybe it's the power of suggestion, or maybe, just maybe, there's something more to this than you've been willing to admit. As your body relaxes and your mind slows, you wonder if this odd and ancient practice is the thing that could finally bring you the peace you've been searching for. But then again, you've been here before, hoping, believing, trusting in something that promises to work wonders, only to be left with disappointment. Is hypnosis any different from all the other remedies you've tried? Or is it just another fad, another quick fix that will leave you right back where you started? The room is silent now, and for a moment, it feels like you're on the edge of something, like the world is just about to shift. The doubts and questions linger, but so does a small glimmer of hope. Maybe hypnosis won't solve everything, but perhaps it's the key to unlocking something deeper, something you've been missing all along. As the session comes to an end and the doctor gently guides you back to awareness, you're left with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear: the search for peace, for relief, for healing isn't over. Hypnosis might not be the magic cure you've been hoping for, but it's something. And for now, something is enough. Maybe, just maybe, it's not the last resort. Maybe it's the beginning of something new, something that works in ways you can't yet understand. Because sometimes, even the most uncertain paths lead to the most surprising places. The wind groans outside like it's carrying a secret, and inside, everything is too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket, but the eerie, bone-deep kind, the kind that settles into the walls, into your chest, into the parts of your mind you've been trying not to visit. You sit alone in a room that isn't yours, in a bed that isn't yours, wearing a gown that smells faintly of bleach and resignation. They told you this was for your own good, that you needed space, that the world was just too loud for someone like you right now. They didn't call it punishment, they called it treatment. No visitors, no conversations, no news from the outside, just long, dragging days, and a growing awareness of every crack in the ceiling. This, this silence, this stillness, this nothingness was supposed to help you, because, apparently, the best cure for women who felt too much was to feel nothing at all. You weren't angry, not loud, not dangerous. You were just tired, sad, overwhelmed. But the doctors had a word for that: nervous exhaustion. Or was it hysteria this time? Either way, they knew exactly what to do with you. tuck you away, far from the people who might ask questions, far from the life that asked too much of you, far from any version of yourself that felt free. This wasn't an asylum, not officially. It was a rest facility, a quiet retreat, and the women who ended up here weren't criminals or lunatics, just inconvenient. Women with opinions, women who cried at dinner, women who asked too many questions, women who weren't sleeping or who were sleeping too much, women who had once been fine and then, suddenly, inconveniently, weren't. They said isolation was healing, that removing all stimulation would help the nerves settle, that silence would soothe, that time alone would force the mind to reset itself like a clock. But they never asked what silence did to you, how it twisted around your thoughts like ivy, how it magnified every doubt, every ache, every regret, how the absence of other people's voices made your own grow louder, and not in a good way. They didn't study the weight of days without touch, without eye contact, without laughter. They didn't calculate what happens to a woman when she's reduced to a file and a locked door. They just assumed that if they turned the volume down on your life long enough, you'd come back, fixed. But the truth is, isolation didn't heal. It hollowed. It scraped away the parts of you that needed connection, that needed to be heard. And the longer you were alone, the harder it became to remember that you had ever been whole to begin with. You started to forget what your own voice sounded like. You weren't allowed to write letters. You weren't allowed to read certain books. You weren't allowed to walk beyond the stone path that circled the garden over and over until you knew every crack in it, like the lines in your hand. Some women left after weeks. Others stayed for years. Some came out quieter. Some came out broken. Some didn't come out at all. They called that healing. No one wanted to admit the truth. That isolation wasn't a treatment. It was a way to disappear a problem, a way to press pause on the uncomfortable reality that women, too, could be overwhelmed, could be anxious, could feel deeply, scream silently, crack under pressure, and instead of listening, instead of helping, they locked the door and told them to rest. And maybe the worst part, you started to believe it, that you were too much, that your feelings weren't meant to be felt, that if you just stayed quiet long enough, you might become the version of yourself that the world wanted back. But silence is not a cure. It's a cage with nice wallpaper. The dark truth is, they didn't isolate you to help you heal. They isolated you because it was easier, because your feelings made them uncomfortable, because pretending you didn't exist was simpler than facing what you were going through. Because this wasn't about you getting better, it was about making you easier to ignore. And somehow, that was called therapy. The wind doesn't howl tonight. It hums, low, steady, almost like applause. And inside, you're not lying in a cold bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the silence in your chest means you're healing or just giving up. No, tonight, something is different. The silence has broken. You're sitting upright, pen in hand, voice in throat, and for the first time in what feels like centuries, you're not afraid to speak. It didn't happen all at once. Reclaiming your voice rarely does. It started in whispers, a journal tucked under a mattress, a muttered no when you were told to calm down, a trembling hand raised at a meeting, a shaky breath before saying, "That's not okay." These weren't revolutions at first, they were sparks, small, flickering, but they were enough to burn through centuries of silence. Because for too long, women's voices were treated like symptoms. Talk too much? Hysteria. Ask too many questions? Disorder. Cry in public? Unstable. Complain? Ungrateful. Scream? Dangerous. So women learned how to swallow every sentence, to flatten their feelings into something more manageable. They were told that healing meant being quieter, smaller, still, but it didn't work. All it did was stretch their pain into silence and call it peace. But then something shifted. Someone stood up and said, "I'm not crazy. I'm angry." Another said, "I'm not overreacting. I'm overwhelmed." And suddenly, silence didn't feel so sacred anymore. It felt suffocating. When women began to speak, truly speak, it shook things, the kind of shake that rattles not just a room, but a system. And oh, did the system panic? Because what happens when women stop apologizing for their own pain? When they stop seeking permission to feel, to exist, to take up space? Everything changes. They wrote books, honest ones, not polished stories with tidy endings, but real ones, full of rage, confusion, grief, joy. They stood on stages and said things that used to get women institutionalized. They created songs that sounded like survival, art that looked like reclaiming, and slowly, the echo chamber of doubt. Are you sure? Maybe you misunderstood. Are you being too sensitive? Started to crack, because when one woman speaks, another hears herself in the words. It didn't mean the world suddenly became fair, but it did become louder, and louder meant less lonely. Of course, there was resistance. There always is. People accuse them of being dramatic, emotional, too much. Funny how too much usually just means finally enough to make someone uncomfortable. But by then, it didn't matter. The voices had grown too strong, and when they spoke together, they didn't sound chaotic. They sounded like a chorus, and that chorus rewrote everything. It rewrote what healing could look like. Not quiet detachment, but messy honesty. It rewrote what strength meant. Not stoic endurance, but radical vulnerability. It rewrote what it meant to be a woman. Not calm, not sweet, not always agreeable, but true. And in reclaiming their voices, women didn't just heal themselves, they healed the spaces around them. They taught others how to speak, how to listen, how to unlearn. They raised daughters who knew they were allowed to be heard. They raised sons who didn't fear emotion, who didn't see tears as weakness. So, what happened when women finally reclaimed their voices? They didn't just speak, they changed the world with every word. The room smells faintly of books and cigarette smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a clock ticks with slow authority. You're sitting upright on a couch, not lying down, like in the movies, but perched politely, waiting for the questions. You're not sure what you're supposed to say, or if saying anything at all will make you feel better. But here you are, in therapy, because someone, somewhere, decided what you're going through isn't just stress or sadness, it's a condition, and that someone whether you like it or not, was Freud, Sigmund Freud, father of psychoanalysis, champion of dream interpretation, childhood trauma, and cigars. He didn't invent anxiety, of course. People have been feeling like the sky might fall at any moment since there was a sky. But Freud gave it a category. He gave it a home. And for better or worse, he gave it a label: neurosis. Before Freud, anxiety was usually a symptom, a side dish to whatever stew of melancholy, madness, or womb related nonsense a woman happened to be experiencing. But Freud, with his couch and notebook and carefully combed beard, reframed it. Anxiety wasn't just an unfortunate feeling, it was a sign of deep, unconscious conflict, a warning bell from your ID or ego, or whatever part of your psychic iceberg was acting up that day. He said, your fear wasn't just fear, it was something buried, something unresolved, possibly something about your mother. At first, it felt like progress. There was a strange kind of power in turning feelings into theories. Women, especially, had spent centuries being told their emotions were flaws, weaknesses, even punishable offenses. But Freud made those feelings meaningful, interpretable, even academic. Now, when a woman cried, it wasn't because she was broken. It was because something in her past, possibly repressed, possibly sexual, probably childhood related, was demanding attention. Of course, Freud didn't stop at women. Men got anxious too. He said anxiety was a part of being civilized, of repressing instinct, of living in a world where your desires couldn't always get what they wanted. And suddenly, everyone had anxiety. Everyone had internal battles. And everyone, it seemed, could benefit from talking it out, preferably with someone wearing glasses and charging by the hour. It all sounds thoughtful, gentle even. But here's the modern twist. Once anxiety became a condition, once it got its own chapter in the manual, it also became a diagnosis, something to be measured, categorized, treated, medicated. And that changed everything. Now, instead of asking why you were anxious, the world started asking how much you were anxious. Was it chronic, generalized, social, panic inducing? Did it come with insomnia or heart palpitations or just an uneasy feeling you couldn't name? The labels multiplied. The treatments did too. And somewhere along the way, anxiety turned from a signal into a status. You're no longer just anxious. You have anxiety. Capital A. Like a coat you wear, like a passport to the world of therapy, prescriptions, and insurance codes. And that's not always a bad thing. Diagnosis means validation. It means help. It means, at least in theory, that what you're feeling is real and treatable. But it also means something else. You've been medicalized. Your fear, your stress, your grief, your very human overwhelm, it's now a clinical matter, a chart, a checklist, a thing to be managed. Sometimes it helps. Truly, it does. The tools, the language, the support, they can save lives. But other times, it flattens you. It turns your story into symptoms, your life into a disorder. And it forgets what Freud once accidentally got right, that anxiety, for all its misery, is also trying to say something. Something about what you've lost, what you fear, what you've buried so deep you barely recognize it anymore. Modern anxiety is real, but it's also rational because the world is fast and loud and relentless. You're asked to be perfect, productive, polite, and also rested, grateful, calm. You scroll past a war, a wedding, and a smoothie bowl in the same 5 minutes. Your nervous system never stands a chance, and so you end up here, in this room, on this couch, somewhere between Freud's ghost and a bottle of SSRIs, wondering if what you're feeling is a sign of imbalance or just proof that you're alive. The truth is, anxiety didn't begin with Freud. It won't end with therapy. But somewhere between the diagnosis and the dialogue, there's a small, powerful space. A space where you remember that feeling too much doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And sometimes that's the only condition that matters. The wind taps at the window like it's asking permission to come in. You sit there, back straight, hands folded, trying to look composed, like someone who has everything under control. On the outside, you're calm. On the inside, your thoughts are sprinting. Again, you've felt like this before, 1,000 times, maybe more. The short breaths, the racing heart, the sense that something is wrong, even when nothing is. But today, for the first time, someone actually says it out loud. You might be dealing with anxiety. You pause. You've heard the word before, whispered in hallways, scribbled in articles, muttered under breaths. But until now, it was always someone else's problem, not something you were allowed to have. Definitely not something real enough to treat. Because for the longest time, anxiety wasn't seen as an illness. It wasn't even seen as a condition. It was a character flaw, a weakness, a woman being too sensitive, a man being too nervous, a child being too dramatic. If you felt overwhelmed, you were told to calm down. If you couldn't sleep, you were told to drink milk. If your stomach hurt before school every morning, you were told to stop being silly. For centuries, people lived with anxiety in silence, not because they didn't suffer, but because no one believed suffering like that counted. And then, slowly, things started to change. At first, the world didn't recognize anxiety as something you had. It recognized it as something others needed to manage. Soldiers came back from the war, shaking and sweating at night, and people started to pay attention, not out of compassion, at least not right away, but out of necessity. They were too loud to ignore, too broken to dismiss. It was called shell shock at first. Later, battle fatigue. It didn't take long before people began to realize maybe the body doesn't need a war to feel like it's under attack. Maybe everyday life, with its losses and pressures and endless expectations, is enough to unravel a person from the inside. Still, progress was slow. In the early days, anxiety was tucked inside bigger diagnoses: neurasthenia, melancholia, hysteria, big, vague words that said more about the discomfort of the doctor than the reality of the patient, especially if the patient was a woman. For women, anxiety wasn't something to treat, it was something to correct, with silence, with rest, with discipline. She wasn't anxious, she was being difficult, too emotional, too dramatic, and so she was sent away told to lie still in a quiet room, not to read, not to write, certainly not to talk, and yet the anxiety didn't go away. It couldn't, because it wasn't a behavior, it wasn't a phase, it was something real, something chemical, something exhausting, and eventually, the world had to admit it. In the 20th century, medicine finally started catching up. People began to study anxiety, not as a symptom of weakness, but as a standalone condition, a pattern, a cycle, something with physical symptoms, something measurable. They gave it a name: generalized anxiety disorder, then a code, then a chapter in the diagnostic and statistical manual, and then, finally, treatment. It wasn't perfect, it still isn't, but suddenly, people were allowed to say, I have anxiety, and be taken seriously. Not always, not everywhere, but often enough that it changed lives. Medication became part of the conversation, so did therapy, and so did the small, quiet question people had never been able to ask out loud. What if I don't have to feel like this forever? Still, even today, the recognition is uneven. Some people get to say they have anxiety and are met with understanding. Others still hear, it's all in your head. You're overthinking. You just need to toughen up. Because the battle for recognition didn't end with a diagnosis, it just moved into the details. Who gets help? Who gets believed? Who gets the space to heal? And who gets handed a pamphlet and a patronizing nod? Anxiety is not new. The name is. The treatments are. The understanding is. But the feeling, that's ancient. Humans have always been afraid, always had bodies that trembled when the world got too big, always carried tension in their jaws, their backs, their hearts. The difference now is there's a name for it, a path for it, not a perfect one, but a real one. And for anyone who has ever sat in a quiet room, heart pounding, wondering what's wrong with them, being told it's not just you, that it's something treatable, something understood, is the first kind of peace. Recognition isn't everything, but it's where healing begins. The wind is quiet now, not gone, just softer, like the kind that brushes the curtains instead of shaking the windows. And maybe that's how it feels these days to talk about anxiety, not like shouting into a storm, but like finally being heard. Through an open window, you sit in a room that's warm, not sterile. There are no straitjackets disguised as rest cures, no prescriptions for silence, no diagnoses scrawled in messy handwriting that blame your womb. Just a chair, a box of tissues, a therapist who looks at you and says, that sounds hard. Tell me more. It took centuries to get here. We used to think women's anxiety was weakness. Then we decided it was hysteria. Then we wrapped it in Latin names and padded rooms and said, don't worry, dear. You'll feel better after some rest. Spoiler alert, they didn't. For years, women's anxiety was treated like a performance issue. If you could keep the house clean, the children fed, your smile bright, well, then you were clearly fine. If not, you were sent away, diagnosed, whispered about, prescribed bed rest like a punishment. We didn't ask why women were anxious. We just assumed it had to be something they were doing wrong. We've come a long way. Today, we understand that women's anxiety is real, that it isn't a character flaw or a bad attitude or a hormone gone rogue. It's a response to stress, to imbalance, to pressure, to trauma, to the endless tightrope walk between too emotional and too cold. We've learned that anxiety shows up in all kinds of bodies at all stages of life, that it can wear different masks: irritability, perfectionism, fatigue, fear, that it doesn't always look like panic attacks. Sometimes it looks like overfunctioning, like pretending everything is fine while quietly falling apart. We've also learned that women, in particular, carry a unique weight: cultural, emotional, generational. They are raised to please, to soften, to be the calm in the storm, never the storm itself. And when the pressure becomes too much, that's when the anxiety cracks through. But now we listen differently. We hear women say, "I'm overwhelmed." And we don't roll our eyes. We lean in. We hear, "I don't feel like myself." And we ask, "What do you need?" instead of, "What's wrong with you?" We've built new language, new tools, new care models. We've shifted from shame to science, from blame to balance. We understand now that healing isn't just about medication or meditation. It's about validation, about connection, about no longer facing it alone. Of course, the road isn't finished. Stigma still lingers in the corners. Many still go unheard, misdiagnosed, undertreated. But the difference is this: women are no longer waiting for permission to speak. They're naming what they feel. They're demanding better care. They're saying, "This is anxiety," and refusing to apologize for it. And that, in itself, is healing. What we've learned is simple, but it took too long to learn it: that women's feelings are real, that their pain is not weakness, that anxiety is not a flaw, it's a signal, and that listening, truly listening, was the medicine we needed all along. The road was long, but we're walking it now, together, with open windows and open ears.